Welcome to a World of Good podcast. I'm Nate Tatman.
And I'm Andrew Gale.
And we are two friends
who love Jesus,
care about the church,
and travel the world to share stories of people who do the same.
Our conversations happen in all kinds of places.
Like a coffee shop and an airport terminal.
Or even the back of a crowded taxi.
But no matter where we go, from Argentina to Zimbabwe,
we capture stories of the good God is doing around the world.
And we hope those stories will do you a world of good.
Welcome to Season 4.
Season 4.
We are, yes, we're just trucking along, aren't we?
That's right, we are. I'm trying to think, is there anything special about the number 4? Like 3 is the perfect number, so we've kind of already passed that. I'm trying to think, is there anything really exciting about 4?
You know, when I hear the number 4 or see the number 4, I always think of basketball. That was my basketball number in high school.
That's good.
And
that's good.
I don't know, it kind of has a basketball theme to it, maybe?
No, I don't think sports is going to be good for us, for me in this conversation. That's awesome. 4 is a great number. 4 makes me think of 12.
It is a good number.
12 is my favorite number. And how many times does 4 go into 12? 3, which is the perfect number. So I think it all works out that way. That would be the way that I would incorporate 4 into our conversation. I guess
if you think of it that way, 4 can make you think of 12. If I'm tracking with you. Man, we are getting off to a great start to season 4 in this conversation. So for those of you who are listening, maybe for the first time, you're just joining us. We start a new season every February and every August. We take the months of January and July off to give ourselves a break, to prepare for the upcoming season. And so this is season 4, a brand new season. It's August. However, something a little bit different happened over the summer. We had a live episode at the Church of God National Convention in Denver. And we have posted that episode at the beginning of August, so you can go back and listen to that. Unfortunately, I was not able to make that episode live.
Yeah,
interview.
It was unfortunately. We would have loved to have you there.
Thank you to the weather, and my flight got canceled and all of that. I've put that in the past, and I do not want to go back there again. That's a very dark place to go back to. I was not happy. But anyway, you can go back and listen to that episode. It was a great episode centered around righteousness and justice, and we had 3 conversations. We had 3 people with 3 different conversations, 3 different stories centered around righteousness and justice. And Andrew, you hosted that interview with Josh Weger, who's also a part of the global strategy personnel there in the office.
Yeah, it was a fantastic experience to have those leaders there live, even though it was, via Zoom, to be able to hear about the continuing struggles of civil war and civil unrest in Myanmar, to talk about the ways that the church, and specifically the clinics that the church supports, are reaching out and caring for people in Uganda, and then to talk with Lennox Boyce, who is a leader in the Caribbean, about the ways that natural disaster cause challenges and the way that the church is stepping up to make an impact in those communities as well. It was really neat. It was neat to have an audience there that was able to listen and be a part of it. It was fun to have Josh co-host with me. Josh is a good friend and knows all of those people really well because he works with them regularly with projects. And so it was just a really fun morning and a fun conversation. Grateful that it was able to be on Facebook. So if you love Facebook Lives and want to go watch it there, but we also did put it on our streaming platform that you can listen to it as one of our normal streaming episodes.
Yeah, and we really encourage you to go back and do that. And it has been a few months, so maybe, Andrew, just give us a little bit of an update of your life, family life, ministry. What happened? What did you do over the summer? Anything meaningful or fun or...
Well, our summer was real short because of the way our kids' school schedule works. So their summer ended. I mean, they started kind of the end of May, had a great family vacation with some friends to Chicago. That was a lot of fun. We then had convention in June where I was at convention. My family was not. But then I took my whole family to our regional coordinator meeting in Bellingham, Washington in July. That was an incredible experience to be together there for that. And your family was there too. That was what was really fun.
Yes.
Yeah. We're so grateful. So grateful for Cornwall Church and the way that they really supported our regional coordinators, helping them to find some relaxation and opportunity to reconnect after 18 months of not being able to be in person with one another. It was a really special experience, one of those ministry experiences that I think will carry with me for a long time. It was really neat. I was so grateful that my family got to be a part of it. Often our missionaries, their families travel along with them, but for us in the office, we don't often take our family with us. But it was kind of right in the middle of the summer, and we said, what if we all went out and did this? And that was a really neat kind of just family time to connect. So we got back from that, and a week, 10 days later, my kids started school. So it felt like a really short summer.
Word.
Yeah, into July. So it felt like a really short summer for us, but they're already back in school in full school mode, which is, I think, is great for me. I mean, it's sad that it started so quickly. I'd love to have a little longer summer, but having a schedule just is so helpful. I'm a schedule person. And so knowing that they have a schedule and I can keep better to my schedule, it's a good thing that they're back in school. So yeah, it's been good. And now we're looking forward to, we haven't done a lot of travel, but it feels like we've done a lot recently I was in Honduras in late May, and then at convention in Denver in June, and then in July with the roundtable. And now looking forward to September when I get to travel out to Fairfax, Virginia to be with Fairfax Community Church as they host our Global Strategy Roundtable. So yeah, it's been a great couple months, busy. It's fun to be back in the office. It feels like it's been a lot happening. We actually moved office spaces during that time. So just a lot of things have been up in the air. But it's good to be back here and now kind of getting back on a normal routine. How about for you? How is life for you?
Still adjusting. I guess that's kind of been our theme for the last 1.5 to 2 years anyway, and we're still in that mode. But life is overall doing very, very well. Some of our listeners would know we moved to a different country during season 3. At the end of March, we moved here to Madrid, Spain, where we now my wife and I serve as regional coordinators for Europe and the Middle East, and we're based out of Madrid. We moved over here for 3 months, and then we went back to the U.S., and actually saw you a couple of times in Denver for the convention.
That was so fun.
That was fun. We were out in Bellingham for the regional coordinator meetings as well with our family. And we've been back here. I believe we've been back a little over 2 weeks. My timing is completely off. I have no sense of timing at the moment. I think it's been 2 weeks since we've been back, maybe a week and a half. I'm not sure, somewhere in between. And, we're just continuing to kind of get integrated into Spanish life and our ministry roles here. We are currently doing 2 things are on our list. The first is getting into a language school, and we're going to be going to visit one of those schools, one of those options on Monday in Madrid City Center. So we're looking forward to that. That will be Stacy and myself doing that. Our girls do not need language learning, which I'm very jealous of. They're doing quite well. Our youngest 2 are native Spanish speakers. They're originally from Costa Rica, and our oldest 2 daughters, they have learned the language and have picked it up and have kept going with it much better and further than Stacy and I have. And so they're doing quite well on their own. So language learning, the other thing that we're doing is we're trying to purchase a vehicle. And it's just one of those things that we take for granted when we're in the U.S.
Absolutely.
We know what questions to ask. We know what to expect. We can speak the language. And we know where to go to buy a vehicle. We know what dealerships or where to get a good deal, at a used car lot or online. And so we have no idea, where to even begin doing this here in a new country. But we're moving forward with it, taking one step at a time. We ask a lot of questions. Any other expats over here, we ask them what they did and just seeking advice. And so we're honing in on a couple of vehicles and getting that done. The next step will be getting our driver's license. Currently we're able to drive on our international U.S. driver's license through the end of the year. So again, just kind of integrating into Spanish life and the culture here and bumping into a lot of walls and barricades along the way.
Absolutely. There's so many big things and so many little things that just take time and energy, and yes. they're new skills to learn. And I'm grateful that you have, a community there of people that you can connect with, both, those that you're connected with through the churches and through the other communities of non-Spanish people that can help you think through those things. That's awesome.
It is a huge, huge benefit and relief when we can share stories and share experiences and find out, what did we do wrong? What do we need to do, better the next time? And it's also a relief when you share these stories and hear that a lot of other expats had similar stories or the same stories. And so it's like, okay, we're not the only ones here that have messed up or doing things incorrectly. And it is a relief. So our girls, they have not started school yet. So our youngest, she actually won't start until September 7th or 8th, I believe. And her first week of school is half days. So she doesn't even start full days of school until mid-September.
That's awesome.
And then Deleska, our oldest who is in school, she's actually going to be doing virtual learning online. And so I think she plans to start in the next week or two, but she can make up her own schedule, and she's very good at that and very diligent in her work. So, well, the other thing that we are learning here in Spain is how to use our electricity. So,
right? I know. I wish people knew what just happened, that we just had in the middle of having a conversation, and doing this, you froze and disappeared, and I wondered where you went, and I get a text message that, my power went out. So, these are the things we expect when we travel, but not necessarily from our places of residence.
No. So so again, it's actually right now it's August, what are we? August 13th, Friday, August 13th. Oh, it's Friday the 13th.
Oh, wow. That's the problem. Oh, had we known.
So obviously we're pre-recording this, and in the middle of me talking about my daughters going back to school, our electricity went out. And as we are learning here in Spain, you have basically a certain allowance of wattage, of power wattage. And apparently we reached our max, and we have, I think, too many things running at the same time, most of which is air conditioning because it is pretty hot, and we live up on the 6th and 7th floor of our apartment building. And so we got to keep the air flowing. So anyway,
you're back. We're grateful for that.
And where we're at.
So Nate, I wanted to. I have one of those self-serving questions, which is that I want to tell you what drink I'm enjoying right now. But before I tell you what drink I'm enjoying, I was going to ask you the question. Are you enjoying any kind of coffee beverage at the moment? Mostly because I want you to say no and then say, what are you enjoying, Andrew? Because then I'll tell you.
Well, I'm not going to say no, but what I will say is I'm sure that your coffee is much better than the coffee I'm drinking. So,
well, I don't know. Do they have good coffee in Spain?
So, no. Spain is not known for their coffee. Spain is known for other beverages, wine. Sure. Lots of vineyards here, and wine and olive oil. You can get a lot of olive oil here, and very good olive oil, actually, but I digress. Anyway, so the coffee, I think one of the local coffee shops that we like that's most American, it's called the Coffee Train. And I believe all of their coffee is actually roasted in Berlin, and it's shipped to Madrid.
Oh, wow.
So I've purchased coffee there. Our problem is that we are now on a missionary budget. And so we are watching our dollars closely. And we actually have 4 coffee drinkers in the house that drink coffee regularly. So if I go and buy, it's not even a pound of coffee for 15 euros, that adds up rather quickly.
That's expensive.
And
wow.
So it is. So we actually did find in Costco, believe it or not, that we have a Costco here in Madrid.
Nice.
There's a Costco, and you can buy I believe it's a 2-pound bag of coffee beans that is locally grown here in Spain and roasted here in Spain. And so far we like it. So, but it's just not as, I'm sure it was roasted sometime last year, and it's just not as fresh as what I would usually like. So, but anyway, I know the reason you asked me was so I could
go ahead.
return the favor and ask you what coffee beverage are you currently enjoying, Andrew?
Thanks for asking, Nate. I appreciate that so much. Yeah. Well, let me tell you, since you asked, I wouldn't have done it had you not asked. But because you asked, let me tell you. So what I wanted to say is I have been trying to enjoy in the heat of the summer some iced coffee. And 2 days ago, I was at, what, you don't like iced coffee? Sad.
No.
Okay. Well, I do. I enjoy iced coffee.
But go ahead. Go ahead.
I normally drink it just black. I mean, with no sugar and no milk in it. But I do like iced coffee. But here's the thing that I did that I'm trying now for the last couple of days. So on Wednesday, 2 days ago, I went to one of my favorite restaurants. It's a local taco shop, a little taqueria, and got delicious tacos. They also have horchata, which is like a rice milk drink that's really common. Mm-hmm. That is rice milk
my
and
daughter's like that.
Yeah, cinnamon and sugar. It's delicious. And drank that and just loved it and thought, oh man, I miss this. And it reminded me of when I was traveling out in Portland, there was a restaurant that actually had iced coffee in horchata. Like horchata was the creamer that they used for the iced coffee. And I thought that was brilliant. So I bought some horchata and I am enjoying, while we are talking, a delicious cup of iced coffee with horchata as creamer. And it is fantastic. Highly recommend it.
I will have to pass that on to my daughters. They're always looking for a new and different way to drink coffee.
Yeah, so it's delicious.
I myself, I'll sit out on our terrace at 80 degrees in the morning, drinking my hot black coffee. Yesterday, I was out in 90-degree weather at a cafe, sipping on my hot black coffee. So,
I do love hot coffee too. I know.
90
and
degrees,
I do too.
20 degrees, I'll drink black coffee.
And I do too. I do love hot coffee at any temperature, but temperature outside, not temperature of the coffee. Hot coffee that's tepid is not good. But I also enjoy iced coffee. So that's been a fun transition in these last couple weeks. So thanks for asking, Nate. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm glad I asked that question. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known what. I know, because you're not drinking a coffee mug. You're drinking
because it's like a
stainless steel travel mug.
It's cold. Yeah, it's trying to keep it cold.
Yeah. So Andrew, we completely digressed there, but we wanted to give an update. I wanted to hear how your summer went. I think you wanted to hear how my summer went. And hopefully our listeners wanted to hear how our summer went.
Mostly I wanted to talk about horchata coffee, but yes, all of those things as well.
That entire conversation led up to you sharing about your new drink of the season. But that's not why we're here. So we are here to kick off season 4. And we have a little bit different. We're not going to change too much from season 3. We're going to continue in our kind of series format, if you will, but we're going to kind of trim it back to just 2 topics or 2 different series. Do you want to share a little bit with our listeners of what they can expect? What are these 2 topics we're going to be talking about, and what they can expect from our conversations?
Yeah, the first topic we want to engage in is trips, talking about trips and what that looks like for the local church to engage in trips, whether they're trips serving locally or serving globally. We want to kind of have a conversation about what that looks like, and which may seem like a somewhat strange conversation, as we're still, in the midst of COVID, but we do hope
traveling?
I know, but we do hope that someday, those kind of opportunities will be more prevalent like they were in the past. And we want to help people in the midst of this maybe more of a waiting season to think about, how do we do this better? How do we do this well? That was one of the things that's been really important to me when I was a missions pastor. I really felt like it was important that we help our people that are going to serve globally think about their faith and their life as a part and an outflow of the work that they were doing. And that it wasn't just about a one-time experience, but it was about learning about themselves and learning to grow in their faith in the midst of that. And so we're inviting some great guests to come on and talk about different aspects of that. And our first one is my good friend Esther Jadhav, who is now Dr. Esther Jadhav, has her PhD in studying cultural intelligence and theology and putting those two things together. And so she's going to come and share with us about just the importance of preparation before going on a trip and what are some of the things that you can do, specifically looking at cultural intelligence and CQ and some of the assessments that you can do to help your church think about who they are, their cultural background before they step, on a plane or even in a van to drive somewhere and serve, understanding those different cultural elements. So we're really excited to have her join us for that first episode.
Yeah. And then, Andrew, you mentioned that you were, formerly in a former life, you were a missions pastor. I was as well, and I think our listeners kind of know that at this point. We've talked about that on a couple of different occasions. But one of the things that we did in my former church at County Line was to bring on an associate missions pastor, and that person was Chris Kazmarek, and we're actually going to be talking to him this season as well. And Chris we had hired him specifically to oversee our short-term missions. We called them impact trips, but to see that arm of our missions ministry. And he has put together a great packet, if you will, a program maybe fits it better for their short-term trips, impact trips at County Line Church in Indiana. And so he's going to come and just talk about what he has put together, what they do in their pre-trip planning while their teams are on trips, the post-trip planning, just kind of the logistics part of it. It will not be a boring conversation, I promise you. Chris is a fun-loving guy. We'll have stories. We'll hear about Chris's story. Chris and his wife, Stacy, they have a great story. They served on the field, received teams, and so they got to see the good, bad, and ugly of short-term missions trips. And I think that's one of the things that we want to talk about through this. We understand, again, we were in that role. Missions trips were a huge part of our development, our faith development. They're a tremendous part of other people's faith development. And, we often say at its very, just on the surface level, I think trips offer the participants a different view of who God is and how he works in other parts of the world. And it opens up their mind to something that they've never thought of or experienced before. And so part of our conversation is we know that trips have that positive effect. We know that trips can also do some damage and have some negative connotations to them. So part of our conversation is we want to have these conversations with other people who can help us think through doing short-term trips in a good way, in a way that benefits everybody involved, from the local church here in the U.S. to the local church to where they're traveling to, that sort of thing. And then we're going to be talking with Kelly and Rhonda Phillips. They are missionaries in Germany. They have been on the field for a number of decades at this point and have a lot of experience in receiving teams. And I think that's a good conversation to have is, for the most part, we're thinking of us as the ones going and what it means on this side of the pre-trip planning and the logistics and all that. But let's step back and take a look and have a conversation with those who are on the opposite side and of those who are receiving teams, and to hear from them as well.
And I think one of the things that I think is great about both Chris Kazmarek and Kelly and Rhonda Phillips is that they both have had experience receiving teams, like you mentioned. So they're not just bringing it from the side of what does an American think about as they travel, but what does that impact have on the ground? So as Chris is creating the logistics for teams that are coming over, he's thinking about it already because he's experienced that on the ground of receiving those teams. And same with Kelly and Rhonda. They've done this for so long that they know the good, the bad, and the ugly of what can happen when teams come over. And so really excited to hear both those conversations. And then the final piece of that is, how do we come back from an experience like that and talk about it in a way that honors and reflects the dignity of the people that we met with the people that we're communicating with, and trying to tell that story in a way that's captivating but also is dignifying is really complicated. It's not as simple as we may think that it is. And Kathleen Nachi from Fairfax Community Church helped us process that at one of our roundtables a couple years ago about how do we tell stories in a way that recognizes that stories are ongoing, that they're not over, they're not complete. We can't necessarily wrap them up with a bow, but how do we also tell compelling stories that do engage people in future trips and future missions engagement? And so I'm excited to have her help us think through that critically and process that together as to what it looks like for us to tell good stories of how God's working around the world.
And that's such an important part that we don't think about. I think in many ways we think about the pre-trip planning, the trip itself, and we're still kind of on that mountaintop when we come back from a trip. But thinking about how we tell those stories.
So I think all four of those are going to be really fantastic conversations that span the pre-trip to the logistics to receiving teams to telling the story from start to finish of what trips are like, and hopefully give a really great perspective on that for missions pastors and leaders in churches here in the United States on how to engage in healthy ways. And there's some great resources we'll point to at the end of this episode and then throughout this season that can help in that as well. The other conversation that I'm really excited about is to talk about immigration. Immigration is an important issue in the United States, but it incredibly affects our churches and communities around the world. And so as we want to approach this conversation, we want to approach this in a way of trying to tell some stories and hear from people who have engaged in supporting people that are trying to immigrate or have had trouble immigrating to the United States. And so we're doing this from both sides. We're reaching out to leaders in countries where people are immigrating from to the U.S. So we talked to Pastor Donnie Allen in Honduras and had a great conversation just about his experience and who he is. And then he talked about some struggles that people at his church have experienced and the push and pull factors that cause immigration. We're excited to have some conversation with some leaders here in the United States who have been on front lines of helping churches think through the immigration issue, whether it's been about taking care of kids that have been separated from their parents at the border, or whether it's about how the church can engage in supporting vulnerable populations like immigrants and migrant workers who don't have the political capital to support themselves and to find the answers that they need living in a new cultural location. And then again, hopefully to connect in with some more stories globally of what it looks like to engage in immigration. And so we don't have all of those people yet scheduled. We're still trying to work through our schedules and make sure that we can make those happen. But I can tell you, I'm very excited about the future conversations and what we have planned and where that conversation can go. I think this is one of those really difficult conversations to have about immigration because it can often become political. But our goal is not to talk about the politics, it's to talk about the people and to talk about the stories and hear what that means and then what the church's response should be in supporting and caring for this vulnerable population.
And that's a really good point, Andrew, because I was thinking the same thing as I was hearing you. I think, when this topic comes up, the first thing or within the first few minutes of that conversation, it becomes politicized. And we are not going to go down that road in terms of, politics. But we want to... So I guess maybe just taking a step back, this is not a topic that I am very familiar with. I've heard stories from people, I've talked with people, but I would say I know immigration at a surface level. And so I'm excited about this to maybe dig down a little bit deeper, hear some more stories specifically from people who have immigrated, who've been impacted by immigration, and to hear their heart and the tension that they live with, and from somebody personally who has immigrated to a completely different continent and what that has meant for them and their family and why they did it. And I think hopefully if we can get this person scheduled, I think it will change how you think of immigration. Whatever you think of it now, it will change how you think of immigration in the future. And so
well, I want to echo that, what you just said, Nate, that, I think that for a lot of people, this is a conversation that they may not have really engaged in much in the past. And for me, a lot of these thoughts and questions started when I started engaging with my brothers and sisters in Mexico. And I had an experience just even a couple years ago that was really transformative, where we went down and visited with churches at the border, and were able to sit with a church that was supporting people that were waiting for the opportunity to apply to cross the border. They were waiting at what they call la línea, the line. And at the border crossing, I mean, it's a long line, a camp of tents where people stay there and wait for an opportunity to meet with a U.S. Border Patrol agent. And this church on the Mexico side of the border would drive a 15-passenger van and pick up people and take them back to their church, and would allow them to shower and wash their clothes and give them food so they can make a meal that they wanted. Because many of these people are living on just bread that gets passed out to them. And even if they want to use the restroom, it actually costs money, we were told, for them to use the restroom at restaurants. And so they're living this really challenging experience. And it caused me to step back and say, I've always thought about this from a political perspective or from a theological perspective, and I've got to hear the stories for me to really understand it. And it was from that moment on that I started reading stories, from the perspective of people who were trapped in situations that were harmful or unsafe, and looking for something that was safe and would be a place where they could thrive. And so that became something that just was really an interest to me. And so I really wanted to just have an opportunity to dig into some of those stories here, hear more, be challenged by that, and hopefully think holistically about what it looks like to support immigrants in the U.S. and abroad.
So a few resources that we want to recommend to you, either in preparation for this season, you can read along with us as we have these conversations, or for some of you, you may have already read these books, but Serving with Eyes Wide Open by David Livermore, again, takes a great look at cultural intelligence, but specifically for short-term missions trips. Another book is The Cultural Map by Aaron Myers. There's a book by Gina Thomas called Separated at the Border. And then another, actually, as I started listed out these resources, I realized, a lot of these resources and more are already at the Global Strategy or on the Global Strategy website. And so if you go to CHOG Global, CHOG, global.org/resources, you will find not only these books, but some other books. And then, Andrew, you also put together short-term impact trips video series to help churches think through their short-term trips.
Yeah, we have some training material that people can reach out to, and it's free material that it's self-guided, so you can go through it and think about what it looks like to process through and engage in kind of cross-cultural thought before you go and land on the field. And it also has post-trip follow-up debrief questions as well.
So we are looking forward to this next season. We're going to have a lot of great conversations around some great topics with some great people, and we hope that you will join us. And as always, you can reach us on social media. Andrew, you want to just share with our listeners on where they can find us?
Yeah, I'm so excited about these conversations. It'll be a different season, but I think that every season we're finding just what kind of stories can we tell that will captivate our listeners to think about what God's doing around the world. And I think these stories will do this. Will do the same thing that the stories in the past have done. So I hope that you follow with us through this season. If you want to reach out to us or connect with us on social media, you can sign up to get new episodes in your email inbox. You can just do that at chogglobal.org/aworldofgood. But there are lots of other ways to connect as well. You can look at information on our Global Strategy Facebook page where we post updates, our Instagram. You can search for A World of Good Podcast, or follow us on Twitter at A World of Good Pod. Thanks so much for listening, and we're so excited to have you on this journey with us through Season 4. Thanks for listening to A World of Good. A World of Good is a podcast production of Global Strategy and Church of God Ministries. Our theme song is Colorado by Leo Flores. If you want to join the conversation, visit us at Twitter at A World of Good Pod, on Instagram, A World of Good Podcast, or visit our website, chogglobal.org/aworldofgood. And join us next time as we share more stories of good from around the world.